Item 2.7, proposed revisions to the FCCC bylaws and standing orders of the Board of Governors. Mr. Brockman?
Yes, and I'm joined by Vanessa Wang, who is General Counsel for the Foundation for California Community Colleges.
Welcome,
And
Ms. Wang.
what you have before you is some revisions to the procedures and standing orders of the Board of Governors, as well as the bylaws for the foundation. The board is required to take action on or is requested to take action on its standing procedures and standing orders, and requested to take action on the bylaws as well. The details are spelled out in some detail. I won't go into them unless the board would like, and Vanessa Wang is here also to answer any specific questions.
I think it'd be helpful, Ms. Wang, maybe if you could point out some of the, I know we've all had a chance to look at this, but if you could point out some of the highlights, that would be great.
Sure. Good morning, President Himmelstein, Chancellor Scott, and members of the Board of Governors. It's my pleasure to be here this morning to essentially present the bylaws and the standing orders. I think that what is important to note, kind of before we get into the detail, and there's a lot of information here, is that the foundation has been working for, I would say, the past year to really bolster its corporate governance. And the bylaws, as you can see, have come down from a 19-page document down to 9 pages, and we really, as a board, went through a process of trying to streamline and make the bylaws efficient, flexible, and anticipate changing circumstances, reflect operational realities, and account for some corporate governance revisions. In terms of the bylaws themselves, which is where I would start, from a high level, I think that if you go to Exhibit A to Attachment 2, I would say there's about 5 categories of revisions. One being some kind of fine-tuning of the foundation's mission, some housekeeping matters, issues relating to the Board of Governors, some procedural matters, and a section regarding conflicts of interest. I would point the board to a couple particular sections, and that has to do with the Board of Governor's role. In terms of the bylaws, what we did was we inserted a clause in our bylaw.
Excuse me, what page is that?
So I think it's page 67 through 69 in your agenda.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's see.
Page numbers for them down there.
Okay. I apologize, I didn't have this packet. I just had my documents. But anyway, going to, I would say, page 72. It talks about, and actually, as I'm looking at this, it looks like the pages are off. I think it's 68. Anyway, let me try to summarize it for the board. If you do go to page 72, at the top, in that section, it talks about the appointment of 2 Board of Governors members to the Foundation's board. And then another section that we revised was a section that had to do, it's Article 8 of the Foundation's bylaws, and that had to do with special invitees, and we had to make an adjustment there. In terms of another, I think, high-level sort of item to summarize for the board, and maybe it would be easier to go to the red line version, and that is a full copy of the bylaws. 2 revisions that I would bring to the board's attention is, one, that the board, sure. on page 89, the foundation board has taken a look at the number of its directors and made a revision so that the bylaws reflect that the foundation board will have 5 and no more than 9 voting members. Another area where there was revision from a procedural matter was on page, let's see. Apologize. Page 101, where our board determined that it would be more efficient for our board officers to hold 2-year terms as opposed to a 1-year term. We also made a revision to the conflicts of interest section, which is on page 104. And essentially, in our bylaws, there was a couple sentences regarding conflicts of interest, and we attempted to conform better to the education code. And so we revised that. In terms of housekeeping matters, I think we made a few revisions regarding committees, the resignation process, process for removing non-board member or non-attending board members, and we also deleted several pages concerning the Brown Act and essentially made it a reference to the Brown Act. And we also added a discussion regarding job duties for our secretary-treasurer. So there is a lot of detail in these materials, and I know that you all are moving on to very important business of today, and I'm happy to answer any specific detailed questions about the bylaws.
Okay, Vice President Perez, then Member Baum.
I just, on the section, page 68, I'm just trying to understand what the change was there. So directors shall be appointed for 3-year terms, but then so the proposed revision will be directors shall be appointed for 6-year terms.
Right, and the information regarding that is that I think in 2007, the foundation came before the Board of Governors and made an amendment back then to change the term of office for foundation board members from 3 to 6 years. So on page 68, that is a summary of the standing orders that essentially, given the corporate governance review and looking at everything, I worked with Steve Bruckman to update the standing orders to reflect that.
Member Baum.
It was my understanding that the foundation wanted to expand its membership in order to diversify its network of connections and networks of influence and fundraising base. According to this, you're actually looking to shrink the number of directors to as few as 5. What's the rationale behind it?
I think the foundation currently is in a time of transition, and currently we have 5 board members, so of course we want to make the revision. And in terms of putting forward the number here, essentially what we tried to do is look at how it worked from an operational standpoint, as well as looking at the corporation's code and the formulas that are in the corporation's code. In the materials, I had indicated that the foundation does recognize the board's desire to grow the board, but at this time, given kind of where we are as a foundation, this is the number that the board would like to start with.
Sure, I understand reducing it to 5, but why limit it to only 9 and not make it a higher limit?
Well, in terms of what we were doing is we were looking at the corporation's code, and they have a number of different formulas that you look at to create your board, and I think that was kind of the discussion that we had at the time, which is 5 to 9, as governed by one of those formulas. Certainly, I think as we look at that and look at where the foundation is currently and intends to go, we can always come back to the Board of Governors and, come up with a different number.
Okay, so yeah, there's nothing that prevents you from going from 9 to 11.
Well, they'd have to come back to
In the future,
us
they'd have
for
to come,
approval.
right. Right. So Vice President Perez had a question, then Member Ramos.
Just a point of clarification. Currently, there is no term limits on the board, and you're not recommending any term limits. Is that correct?
Correct.
And the current members of the board have been serving continuously for, I mean, some of those members have been there since like the
98.
foundation started?
Right.
Okay, is that something that was not addressed or didn't appear to need to be addressed?
I think that in terms of the foundation, it is helpful to have kind of that historical board membership. Certainly, it was not something that the board contemplated, but as I sit here today thinking about it, I would not necessarily recommend a board term, a limit. So I'd be happy to have some discussion about that.
Member Ramos.
Yes, thank you. I had the opportunity and privilege to be involved in the early drafting of these recommended changes. I wasn't involved in some of the more recent iterations, but I would say first and foremost, let me share my support for the recommendations that are being proposed. I would underscore what Council has expressed to us as this being a fluid time for the foundation, a time where continuity and clarity, I think, is really important. I would see this as a snapshot of the moment that the foundation is in, with some recognition that as things stabilize and clarify going forward, there will probably be opportunities to come back and address some of the concerns and issues that have been raised related to things like the term limit question. But I do think that continuity is probably of greatest import right now in the foundation's work from a governance standpoint, given the significant leadership changes that have happened there recently. I do think that we have a very strong working board right now. I want to commend not only Vanessa Wang for her significant efforts in pulling forward what was a complicated process to just present this material, but I think Jan Dehesh, our board chair, has led a very important process to galvanize our board in a way that, frankly, when I first got on, was not the case. We now have a very strong working board culture. I think that the notion is well taken that having the minimum go down to 5 may seem counterintuitive, but it merely reflects the reality that we now have a team that is a working group of 5. The idea of capping at 9, I think, is principally, as I recall, some of the discussion we had about absorptive capacity, simply not wanting to take on more change in acculturating new members too quickly now that the board has consolidated. So I guess to sum up, what I would say is I think that these are, for the moment, really sensible, appropriate, responsive changes. I don't think they're changes that I would say are permanent, lasting changes. We will probably want to come back after more deliberation, more decision-making about the ultimate decision regarding a permanent CEO. And there will probably be room for more discussion and more proposals from the foundation board about changes that would be appropriate in due course. But I endorse very strongly the changes that are at the table and hope that this board will see the wisdom of encouraging us to move in this direction.
Member Malumed.
On page 90, I see one sentence that you have removed that takes away a lot of our power. The Board of Governors may remove at any time without cause any director of the corporation by a majority vote of the Board of Governors. Can you talk about that some more?
Sure. What we did was, in our effort to streamline and make the document efficient, we simply moved that section down to the section 7 so that it was in a place that kind of made more sense.
Thank you.
Member Reed.
I'd like to move the proposed revisions for the bylaws and standing orders of the foundation.
Second by Member Ramos.
McDougall,
Oh, McDougall, sorry.
although I would have.
I know you would. I do want to echo Member Ramos's comments a bit. As you all know, I've been involved in these discussions as well, and I really want to commend our board members, Ramos and Reed, along with the president of the foundation board, Jan Dehesh, who I've worked with, and Vanessa and Keith. They've really done a yeoman's job in recrafting this. This was not easy work. It was a lot to think about, a lot to do in a very difficult time for the foundation. So first and foremost, I want to thank you all for your work, and Gary and Henry want to thank you for your leadership on this board's behalf. With that, we have a motion by Member Reed, second by Member McDougall. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Ms. Wang.
Thank